So welcome so much to the 2021 Vanderbilt Virtual VSSA. We're now in week 2. I am not Beth Bowman. I am in for Beth, even though I sound and look very much like her. We're identical twins. I'm in for Beth, the Vanderbilt VSSA director, because she is on a well-deserved vacation. And I'm Becky Adams. I'm a professor at a school that's located next to Vanderbilt called Belmont University. And since we're identical twins, we thought it would be a good substitution for me to fill in for her today. I'll do my best to answer any questions, but actually LeAnn is here to answer your questions, so I don't need to know what I'm talking about. This week, we have early career graduate trainees who are here to tell you about their pathway in training and how they came into their field. And since today is Wednesday, we are highlighting our MD students, or Vanderbilt MD students. And so our first speaker today is LeAnn Lam, who will take it away from here. And we're so excited to have her join us. Thanks, LeAnn.
Thank you, Becky. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm just going to try to share my slides. Can everyone see my slides? Okay, the age-old Zoom question. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm so honored to talk to you guys today because I actually sat in your exact shoes just 4 years ago. So I was part of VSSA, specifically UCRIP in 2017. So I'm really not that far ahead of where you guys are right now, but I hope that I can share some of the lessons I've learned and experiences that have shaped me into the person I am today. So briefly about me, I'm a second-year med student at Vanderbilt. I actually just finished my last day of my surgery clerkship, so I'm almost a third year. I'm originally from Salt Lake City, Utah. I went to the University of Utah for my undergrad, and then I spent my gap year working as a research assistant at VUMC in the OB-GYN department. It was actually with the same research mentor that I met with during VSSA. And so today I'll talk about myself and my path getting here, and then I'll go into my professional story of how learners and trainees can be change makers. So like I said, I grew up in Salt Lake City, Utah. My parents were refugees from Vietnam. They were randomly sponsored by a family in Utah, which is how they ended up in Utah. They didn't know any English. My dad was like a dishwasher boy and a janitor. So it's really humbling to hear how they truly worked their way up from the bottom. And also recognizing for me that the opportunities and privileges I have now are because of the sacrifices that my parents made. And so I also have one older brother. His name is Alec. My brother, he is in STEM as well. So I think seeing all of the cool stuff that he got to do made me want to copy him. I actually wanted to be a journalist first, though. I was definitely more into the reading and writing side. But then in 6th grade, I remember getting this award for excellence in math. And it was probably, like one of those participation awards. But I think to me, it just was like, oh, like maybe I could finally be good at something. And so I thought more about STEM pretty early on. In high school, I started to get more involved in STEM. I was the Science Sterling Scholar for my school, which is just like this award where one student represents each major field like math, science, and like English. I also did a summer chemistry program at the University of Utah, and that was really great exposure just to see what does chemistry and science in general look like on the university level and getting more exposure to actually being in a lab. And then I got to do a hospital internship in high school at my local hospital. I was in the medical oncology department, and that was really my first exposure to medicine. I don't have any family members in medicine, and so just being able to see that and kind of work with nurses and doctors was something I'm now looking back, I'm really glad I got to have early on. So as I start to talk about my college experiences and how I decided I want to go to medical school, I wanted to kind of group these into some common themes. This first lesson is that deciding what you want to do is more of a process of elimination rather than figuring out that specific career. And I think if I realized this earlier, I would have focused so much less on the destination and constantly worrying about where I would finally land and just appreciate each experience for what it was, knowing that no experience is a waste of time. It's just truly adding to your career in the end. So went to University of Utah for college, like I said. Started off, summer of my freshman year, I was part of this access program for women in science. They help put you into a research lab in your freshman year. And it honestly was just so great to have a strong cohort of people who were also interested in STEM and really build that network and mentorship really early on. I decided to major in biomedical engineering. My brother also did it. So yes, I am kind of copying him, but I got a sneak peek into it and I found it really interesting. I like the act of applying science and building something. That extra step of innovation was something that I found really captivating. So entering college, I had no idea what I wanted to do. I considered a lot of things. I thought about going straight into industry and working as a biomedical engineer, maybe getting my PhD because I love teaching in academia. And I always had this inkling of being a doctor, but to be honest, I was very intimidated by how long the road was. And my approach was that I'm going to try to find literally anything else that was a shorter route that would make me just as happy. So I did a summer internship my sophomore year at a pharmaceutical company. It was my first time working in industry. And it was a great way for me to see that industry was not for me. I appreciated that you could develop a drug, it would save millions of lives. Like, I totally see how that's fulfilling for people. But I think for me, the point of where I was helping people, it felt very disconnected from the point where the patient would actually receive that drug. And I was just more drawn to that patient side. I wanted to talk to them, interact with them, and just really have that direct one-on-one interaction. So kind of nixed that from my list. And then I was like, okay, like I'll think about tissue engineering and maybe doing a PhD in that. I joined a tissue engineering research lab in undergrad, and it gave me exposure to the PhD route. I encountered a similar dissonance. I was like, I'm working on these cells in the lab. I'm kind of missing the patient interaction and just that same dissonance that I felt like I had in my internship. But one of my most enjoyable experiences of my bioengineering program is that we all had to make a medical device as part of our graduation requirements. And so my team, we developed this dental anesthetic device, and we actually competed in this competition to sell it to real healthcare company. So I might not be doing biomedical engineering stuff right now, but this just is an example of like knowing those skills and having that background. It's going to really add to whatever I end up doing as a doctor. So end of my junior year rolls around and I'm like, I still don't know what I want to do. Like nothing is really screaming at me. I didn't really like my internship or research. And I was just scrolling on Facebook. My pre-med advisor had posted this VSSA summer program. And I was like, I just need to get out of Utah, do something else. I kid you not, I did not even know where Vanderbilt was located. I just applied because I needed to do something else. And so when I got in, like first thing I Google is where is Vanderbilt? And then I'm like, okay, like guess I'm going to Nashville for the summer. So I treated this internship as the last straw before I was just gonna go work in industry. If I didn't love this medical internship, then I wasn't gonna take the MCAT. And let me tell you, this was my aha moment. So I loved every single moment of it. I was in an OB-GYN research lab and I got to work in the hospital every day, interact with women after they had their C-sections. I got to interact with doctors, shadow teams, and the summer flew by so fast. It really felt like this is what I want to do. This is where I want to be. And I never felt that way during my internships and research lab. So it was kind of this gut feeling that I was like, okay, like this is a sign that this is what I want to do. And I understand not everyone will have this aha moment. My mom gave a really good piece of advice when I was deciding, and she's like, you don't have to be 100% sure. You can be 70 to 80% sure, which is probably where I was at. And then just kind of trusting yourself and having that little bit of gut intuition. You know, there are just some things that you just have to take that leap of faith. And I don't regret it at all. Thinking about how my professional identity has blended with my personal identity. During my time in college, I realized I was doing a lot of things that I will be doing as a doctor. I did an alternative spring break in Tijuana in San Diego at the border. I worked with refugees, and I was also camp counselor for kids with congenital heart disease. I also knew I wanted some sort of mentorship and teaching element in my career, and I'm not going to lose any of that when I'm a doctor. So I felt like looking back, those were a lot of the things that I realized I actually do get to have when I'm a doctor. And then my second lesson is that your professional life does not have to come at an expense of your personal life. So they are both and, not either or. Investing in yourself is not taking away from your ability to be a good doctor, it's adding to it. So I'm just finishing up my 2 years of med school. They have been so much fun. It's a lot of hard work, but it's honestly where I'm supposed to be. I don't have any regrets, and medical school flies by. So I wish I knew how fast it goes, because I would have been much less intimidated to do this path. It's really gone by in the blink of an eye. And so there's a lot of things that I've been able to do in med school that have really aligned with my personal identities as well. I am the president, I'm one of the presidents of the wellness committee. And so we plan these games called College Cup, where we compete against each other in events, which is what this tug of war is. I'm also one of the leads of wilderness medicine. So I get to combine my love for hiking with medicine. So just know that whatever you do, you're able to make time for the things that make you you, and you shouldn't have to give those up to be successful in your career. This is just a snippet. I was looking back at my old pictures. So some days are going to look like the left, where this was our first exam. My study buddy and I had to draw out all the biochemical pathways. And like some days will look like this, but also some days are going to look like the right, where this is literally a screenshot from our lecture. Is it lasagna or endocarditis? So just making sure, just like go with the punches, enjoy every moment. And then lastly, thank your mentors, families, and supporters at every stage. I hope you all really make the most of your summer at VSSA. All of the people I've met in this are people that I knew from VSSA. So the top left, he was my shadowing buddy, and I run into him at conferences all the time. You guys might meet Dean Fleming sometime. This is the bottom left. She's the dean of the med school. And some of you guys will have met Dean Vincent, who runs UCRIP. So really, take the summer to make those connections. They're always willing to meet with you. I met with a lot of them, and they've proven as really, really strong mentors, especially when it came to applying. And then these are my research mentors. This is who I worked with over the summer, and I got to deliver babies with them this year, go to operations with them. And so it just goes to show, like, it truly comes full circle. It's been so much fun to be able to see them in research and then also get to work with them. These are other lessons I didn't really have time to talk about, but just know everything happens for a reason. Hindsight's 20/20. Take advantage of every opportunity. You miss 100% of the shots you don't take. There's room for everyone at the table, so don't compare yourself to anyone else's path. And then just know imposter syndrome's real, but I promise you're supposed to be here. So with that, I'm going to switch over to my professional story of how learners can be change makers. So when I started med school, I was asked to join this group called Campaign Against Racism. It's a network of international advocates working to dismantle structural racism. And especially with the events that have been happening in the past year, it was important for me to, get involved in this. It was really an important issue. And so the Nashville chapter, we chose to focus our efforts on eliminating race-based reporting of eGFR, which stands for estimated glomerular filtration rate. So what is glomerular filtration rate and how is it used? You guys might have to think all the way back to your high school biology. So the kidneys, its job is to take toxins out of the blood and then get rid of it through urine. Simply put, blood goes from your body, it goes to your kidneys, enters the glomerulus, which is this big ball of blood vessels, it gets filtered, and then it exits the kidney. So GFR measures how fast this blood is being filtered through the kidney, and it tells you how well your kidneys are working. The gold standard, we would use these two materials to measure it directly. It's very time intensive and no patient wants to do it. So instead we estimate it by using this thing called creatinine. And creatinine, it's found in your skeletal muscle and dietary meat. The more muscle you have, the more muscle mass you have, the higher your serum creatinine will be. And so GFR, it's really important for diagnosing and managing kidney disease. For chronic kidney disease, it's determined based on your GFR. And if you have a GFR of less than 60, then that's when you are considered to have pretty severe CKD. So where did this whole thing of having race be used in your GFR? There's two main equations that we use to estimate GFR. Do not memorize them. I just want you to pay attention to the fact that there are race correction factors if you are of African ancestry. So in the first equation, your eGFR is 21% higher if you are Black, and in the second equation, it's 16% higher. They justify this by saying that Black people have higher muscle mass, but if you delve deeper into these studies, you'll find that, in fact, the study designers were the ones that were assigning race, and it was based on what their skin color was, not actually their true ethnicity. So furthermore, there's this concept that race is a social construct. And what this means is that the way we categorize people is based on societal norms and practices we have, not biology or genetics. Black race, it specifically had a long history of people in power using it as a justification for perpetuating racial injustices. And when we use race as a proxy for things that are actually social differences, and then they get interpreted as being due to racial differences. So this really negates the different social dynamics that may be playing a role in these findings. It ultimately leads to damage and harm for non-white populations. And so the biggest thing is we want to be clear that race does not equal biology and genetics, and that's why it shouldn't be included in estimating GFR. Furthermore, this concept of using race as a proxy for muscle mass was only based on 3 small studies. Each study had less than 100 people, and race was determined by study researchers looking at their skin color. So I know you guys are undergrads, but like, I hope you know this is not solid, rigorous research design at all. We should not be using this to make decisions about someone suffering from chronic kidney disease. And if we just think about this practically, it doesn't make sense to assume that all Black patients have higher muscle mass than white patients. We wouldn't assume that Tyra Banks has higher muscle mass than UFC champion Ronda Rousey. Yet, when we use this equation, this is exactly what we're doing. We're making these assumptions. So why does this matter? Like, why is it so bad to overestimate GFR in Black patients? Well, there's a lot of health disparities with Black patients living with chronic kidney disease. Kidney failure, it's an irreversible process, and Black individuals are 4 to 5 times more likely to have kidney disease. They also represent a large proportion of dialysis patients, which is the treatment if your kidneys fail. And they have the lowest rate of kidney transplants and have worse post-transplant outcomes. So additionally, misclassification causes delays in other important clinical areas. Probably the most important one that I want to talk about is to get on the transplant list. So to get on the transplant list, you need to have a GFR of less than 20. And with this race-based coefficient overestimating GFR in Black individuals, it means that Black individuals are getting on the transplant list later, presumably when their kidney disease has worsened. And so the way the transplant list works is the longer you're on it, the higher chance you have of getting a transplant. So you can see that this delay in referral means that they probably lost years that they could have potentially been on the list and have gotten a kidney. So all of these things, the combination of race being a social construct and not biological, and overestimating eGFR, delaying and worsening care for Black individuals, was really this push to eliminate this from Vanderbilt, this concept of race-based reporting. And so how did we do it? It was a very long process. This actually started 3 years ago before I even started med school. There were 3 med students who spearheaded this. They gathered literature about the practice of race-based reporting. And then they also worked with other institutions who had already eliminated this practice. So I think Seattle was the first one, and then one of the, I think MGH was the next one that eliminated. So we worked with them to see the strategies that they had used. Once we had the data, we presented it to the chair of nephrology at Vanderbilt. We also worked with other key stakeholders like the Office of Health Equity and Director of Laboratory Medicine, who would actually implement the change. And then we received a verbal commitment in July of 2020 to remove this process. So that was a very long process. And of course, we did not do it without facing some major obstacles. The biggest one is just this belief that race is a biological variable. So really focusing on the literature and sticking with the evidence to show that it is in fact a social construct, which is definitely a relatively new topic, I would say. Also, this is sensitive. People don't really want to talk about this and get very uncomfortable. And so it's important to emphasize common goals and ask probing questions out of curiosity as opposed to us attacking them. There is definitely pushback from physicians who were involved in this research, and they kind of use this reason of we need more evidence before we can implement this change. But it was important, you know, working and having an open conversation with them and focusing that it's very problematic to be using this right now. We also knew that we would need to maintain partnership with them and engage the community. So it was important for us to be working with them and not against them, and constantly engaging them as we made these decisions and pushed forward. So that was in July of 2020 when Vanderbilt eliminated it. In March of this year, the National Kidney Foundation and American Society of Nephrology actually made a recommendation to remove it completely. So it is now a national recommendation to remove race-based eGFR. So that is an incredible accomplishment in the nephrology department. And I wish I could say this is just a problem with nephrology, but it's not. You will see it in every field that you go in. So sorry, I almost fell on my chair. I'm so excited. Anyways, so cardiology has the same problem, OB-GYN, urology, endocrinology. And so, you know, the work doesn't stop here. This is honestly just the beginning. And so major take-home points from this is I hope you guys know that, you know, you may be learners for a very long time. This is a very long route, but even as early career students, you can be a change maker. It's important to build your knowledge base. We knew more about the literature than the department heads did. And this concept of distributive leadership, where you're a busy medical student, this was not possible without a whole group, and we really divided the leadership tasks. Make sure that you engage multiple stakeholders, and you know, you remember at the end of the day who we're doing this for, and it's for the marginalized voices that have been affected by this. So with that, this is the whole group that helped make the change. It was not only me, but that is the end of my presentation. That was very fast. I know I talked pretty fast because I had a lot I wanted to get through, but I'll stop sharing my screen and then happy to answer any questions before Matt comes.
That was so inspiring, LeAnn. Very, very interesting. We have here 5 minutes before our next speaker. You guys are welcome to unmute yourself and ask a question, or chat in to ask your question. I see Brooklyn's raised her hand. So Brooklyn, go ahead.
Can you hear me? Sorry, I'm in lab.
Yeah, you sound great. Go for it.
I was just wondering, so like research like that you did like in the hospital, because a lot of people I feel like, or at least me, like we're like actually like at a bench working, and sometimes it's hard to see the connection of how that helps people in medicine. So like something that you did for your gap year, how do you go about doing that? So like when you have, is that just a research assistant, but you just do clinical research as a job? Is that what you basically?
Yeah, that's exactly what I did, Brooklyn. So I also didn't realize that research doesn't have to be wet lab research. Like wet lab is like bench research, whereas dry lab is like clinical research or even health policy, medical education. And I didn't realize that that was a very, very big field, like translational research is as well. So that's exactly what I did, Brooklyn. And I think having that experience was the patient care and the direct interaction that I needed to see to realize that that's what I wanted to do. And so that's what I did during my gap year. There are a lot of clinical research assistant jobs. And so I'll give my number at the end of this, but feel free to reach out to me. I can connect you. And also there's a lot of people you can talk to while you're here for the summer that would love to have gap year students. Like, it was not hard for me to find a job as a clinical research assistant.
Perfect, thank you.
Thank you.
I don't know
awesome.
who's next.
Yeah, I think I'm keeping track of it.
Okay.
We have Anna, I believe, was next to raise her hand.
Yeah, hi. I have a question kind of relating to what you were talking about originally. I feel like even within the pre-med population, if you feel very confident that you want to go to med school, there's a lot of people who know exactly what they want to do after med school. So I just was wondering if you had any insight into how to handle knowing that you want to be a doctor and that's the career that you want to go on, but maybe not necessarily knowing exactly where you see yourself within the realm of medical school and careers after that.
Yeah, for sure. Well, girl, I don't even know what I want to do after med school. One step at a time. Like, I think there's this trap of this field we're in where you're always thinking about the next thing. And I just highly encourage you guys to really stay present in the work that you're doing right now. It is hard work and burnout is so real. It's important for you guys to take a step back and realize how much amazing things you guys have accomplished. I don't even know what I want to do, but there is no need to worry about that right now. In medical school, you have so much time to research and figure out what your interests are. My interests have changed drastically from when I started med school because, your concept of what you think you like is so much different from when you're actually doing it. You're spending 2 or 3 full years working in the hospital. You're working with different doctors who have created their own path, and some are doing healthcare policy, some are program directors for residency, some are doing global health. And by seeing those and getting to talk to them while you're in medical school, there are ample opportunities to figure that out. And so I don't have a good answer for you within to give in a minute or so, but I truly would not worry about that. I think it's important to come in with an open mind, and that will really make your med school experience so much better. I have found the people who come in not knowing what they want to do have a much better experience on their rotations than the people who know for sure that they want to do surgery or neurosurgery or things like that.
Fantastic advice. Great. I think our next question was one who had his hand raised but typed it in. Preston asked, can you give examples of other ways classmates are trying in medicine to solve other social issues? It seems like you can have a lot of influence even outside of the hospital as well. Do you have other classmates who have projects who are working on social issues?
There's a lot of projects going on, especially in the past year or so. So Vanderbilt actually has a committee that was formed a couple of years ago. It's called Social Mission Committee, and its sole dedication is focused on addressing these social issues. We do a lot of community service projects, working with incarcerated people. One of the biggest things that was also medical student led is, you guys might walk past it when you're here, but Vivian Thomas Way. So Vivian Thomas he's a Black doctor who helped develop the Blaylock Taussig shunt, which is something for heart disease. And it was initially named Dixie Place. And so once all of these events started happening, one of our advisors were like, if you guys want to make change, because he understood it's hard to make a change as a medical student, like you really don't know much. And he's like, why don't you start here? And within 4 or 5 months, they had done it. So Vanderbilt is really good about promoting change or encouraging students to create change. And so there's so many ways. We can talk offline too, Preston, about the things that are going on, but I think I've really appreciated how Vanderbilt always supports their med students in those endeavors.
Fantastic. We have so many other amazing questions. I'm going to take time for one more so that we can move on to our next speaker, but I think LeAnn has mentioned she's happy to share her contact information as well. So maybe she can type that in the chat. But Jillian, do you want to go ahead and ask your question, last question of the session?
Mine wasn't that good. I can definitely just email her so someone else can go.
Cool. I think Chinyalu, if you would like to ask a question, I'm sorry about pronunciations.
Oh, that's okay. So my question is like, what like advice would you like give to like those who are currently like moving to the sophomore year of undergrad, and also like what if you like an undergrad, like what would you redo again?
What would I redo if I was an undergrad?
Mm-hmm.
I would honestly, I wish I spent more time doing things outside of medicine. I felt like, or even just outside of STEM in general, I kind of like pigeonholed myself pretty early on, and I thought that's what I needed to do to succeed. And I was just kind of like focused on fast tracking myself to med school, knowing how long the route would be. But once I got here and I talked to a lot of my classmates, I mean, I took a gap year, which was already a hard thing for me to do because I wanted to go straight through, but it ended up being the best decision I made. I highly encourage everyone, if you can, take some time off. It's just, you grow so much as a person to be able to take some time not being a student and just being able to, you know, really focus on the things that you want to dedicate to. I highly encourage you, do things that like you may not ever be able to do again. My friends, my classmates who like, I don't care about the science stuff they did, but what makes them cool is all of these unique experiences they have that are going to add to their abilities as a physician. Like one, she lived in Alaska for 2 years doing AmeriCorps. And, you know, like another person, he like spent time like doing research on orangutans in Costa Rica. You know, it's just like those are the things. And, you know, it ties back to my presentation. Like you don't have to give those up to be a doctor. And those are like, interviewers will much rather talk about that stuff than, you know, your research. But we can talk more about it though. I want to make sure Matt has his full time to give his presentation because he has an amazing story. But seriously, everyone, email me, text me. I'm available at any time. Yeah, say hi to me. Would love to connect with all of you guys. And I hope you guys have an incredible summer.
Thanks so much, LeAnn. Thanks for joining us. Awesome.
Check out our website to find recordings of all of our videos. We'll get them posted about a week after each of the presentations. We can't wait to see you.